Michigan basketball back in the Elite Eight for the fourth time in the last 8 NCAA tournaments, looking to get to their second Final Four in the last 3. An incredible run being continued here by Juwan Howard and Michigan basketball. I'm Clayton Sayfie with Chris Balas and Austin Fox. Use the promo code BLUE60 at thewolverine.com for our full coverage. We got Chris down in Indy right now, ready to cover yet another Elite Eight game tonight. 9:57. We'll be awake, a little coffee maybe or something like that, but we'll be ready to go. There could be worse things to complain about. Only, 6 teams left now, and we're complaining about a 9:57. I'm not, but a lot of people.
T-shirt for that? Sweet
What's
Six?
that?
You get a T-shirt for the Sweet Six?
Yeah, exactly. You made it to, and this year you make it all the way to this Tuesday night. Kind of a weird schedule.
Weird.
I don't love it, but
okay.
Again, we could be complaining about much worse things. So, and we thank our sponsors, Lewis Jewelers, as well. But, guys, let's start with the Florida State game. 2-point favorites Michigan was coming in. They end up winning by 18. Could have been more. Obviously, the garbage time has been kind of a problem for some of these guys all year. Great to see Jace Howard get that and one. But, it was a clinic. I think that's been a term that's been used quite a bit here coming out of that game. But Michigan's game plan was fantastic. They scored 50 points in the paint because they were just cutting to the rim. Florida State helps a ton. They turn their back, and next thing you know, your guy like Shawnee Brown or Brandon Johns is dunking at the rim. And what were your guys' thoughts on that game? Because I thought it was just an outstanding game plan and even better execution by Michigan's guys without Isaiah Livers.
Number one, the adjustments after halftime to get these switches, because Florida State likes to switch everything, to get the matchup that you're looking for, attack the rim. When we talked to Franz Wagner, he said, man, the message at halftime was attack, 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 and then you'll get what you want. And then to have the guys dive into the rim rather than standing around. That's when the offense was getting stagnant in the middle of the year there, near the end of the year. They were trying to force feed the post, and they were holding the ball and everything else, and the ball wasn't moving. Instead, this time, Juwan Howard told him at halftime, he said, hey, man, you need to attack. We need to get into the situations that we want to get into, and then don't be standing around. Shawnee Brown, I thought, did a great job really cutting to the rim. Terrence Williams does a pretty good job of that in his limited minutes. And it's funny watching him work with Hunter Dickinson out there. I think that's going to be a nice combination in the future. But they didn't shoot the ball particularly well, and they only had 11 threes, and yet they still had 15 assists in the second half against that length that everybody talks about, and that afterwards Juwan Howard kind of mocked how people were worried about it. He goes, yep, we heard about it all week. We heard about how big they were, but credit them. On the other end of the floor, I thought the defense was really good, and I thought that Florida State's game plan was awful. I don't know what they were trying to do offensively, to be honest with you, and I said many times, get your big guards out there and post them up. And, spend all week, say, hey, Scotty Barnes, get down low against Mike Smith. But you know what? At the same time, who cares, right? This was a blowout win, and hadn't seen Florida State all year. All you can do is go off by what you hear. I actually picked Michigan to lose a tight one, I think, with you guys, and kind of depends on the day and how you feel. By the way, I feel really good about this UCLA game, so who knows? But to me, it was a clinic, and anybody who questioned whether or not Juwan Howard could coach and all the bull BS about Phil Martelli's the guy, no, it's Juwan Howard's team and it's Juwan Howard's offense. They did a hell of a job.
Michigan's defense and how well it played was one of my biggest takeaways from this one. They held Florida State to just 40% for the game, and that's one game after they held LSU to just 39% shooting. So their defense is playing incredible. It was midway through the first half, and they had already forced 10 Florida State turnovers. They were disruptive all game long, and it was really good to see. Balance on offense was the name of the game for Michigan. They had 4 guys scoring double figures, and yet nobody had more than 14 points. Both Hunter Dickinson and Brandon Johns poured in 14. Michigan wasn't clicking from deep in this one, but it didn't seem to matter. They only hit 3 3-pointers. Shawnee Brown off the bench went 2 of 2 from deep. What a weapon he's been off the bench this year. Mental toughness was also another thing that impressed me in this one, because when Florida State made their run in that second half and cut it to 5 at 41-36, Michigan answered immediately. Mike Smith converted an and one on the other end, and then the rest is history. It was a blowout from that point on. Capping things off with the Jace Howard and one was the perfect exclamation point on this one. You could tell it was pretty meaningful for Juwan Howard. He gave that fist pump on the sidelines, so that was just a special moment in what's been a very special tourney run so far for Michigan.
Do you see Janine Howard's video of her just screaming and going crazy? I mean, that's awesome. I tweeted that we need a Janine Howard live reaction to that, and then she ended up posting one later on. I don't know if it was because of me. I don't think she saw it, but incredible for that family. You know, and Juwan's been to this is his 4th Elite Eight now as a either a player or a coach. First, obviously, as a coach, but going back, Chris, to what you mentioned about the game plan and how you know, the people that, you know, question if he could coach, and I think it's fair when he came in to say, can he do this, you know, at this level? We see how hard it is. I mean, Leonard Hamilton is an example of a guy who we talked about all last week, how good of a coach he is. He's never made a Final Four. It's not easy to get there. Not saying, you know, Michigan's a cakewalk to win this game, but, you know, I was kind of thinking about it before the Florida State game. Like, you know, how much confidence do I have in this staff to put together a good game plan against a tricky Florida State team? You talk about the length and everything. And I was like, I mean, you got Sadie Washington there. You have Phil Martelli there. And you have Juwan Howard, who has proven to be able to do all that. And Howard Isley seems to be doing a great job with the offense. And Juwan Howard probably, you know, coming in was like, hey, we're not going to leave this to chance. Like, Florida State gives up a lot of threes, but we can get to the rim on them on some of those cuts you were talking about. And that was the game plan. Michigan only hit 2 threes, right? And that's all they needed. Three threes.
But they had, you know, Franz Wagner had 3 wide open looks. And if you want to pick, you go back to that first half, I think they shot 33%, missed a lot of free throws. Weren't they 14 of 22 from the free throw line, and they missed a couple front ends of 1-and-1s? Well, those are shots that you're going to have to make against the Gonzagas and the Baylors. So that's something that needs to be cleaned up. But when you're talking about a game situation like that, and getting to the line like they did, everybody was like, oh, look at the foul disparity. Well, even Leonard Hamilton said, you know what, they were attacking the rim and we were settling. You know, how many times did you see Florida State even try to get to the rim with their big guards? You know, they're passing it around and they're settling for mid-range or long-range jump shots. Some of the shots they made, and they played better in the second half. You know, I think 8 minutes in, Michigan was 8 for 10 from the floor, and Florida State had still shaved 2 points off the lead. So they were playing a little bit better offensively. But to sit there and say, you know, well, this is, you know, lucky, whatever, so on and so forth, just isn't the case, man. These guys played great basketball, 15 assists in one half of basketball. Think about that. And 17 of 18 buckets in the paint. Really, really impressive.
Yeah, we talked about the assist numbers last week against LSU as well and how impressive they were. Michigan out-assisted LSU 22-8, and they did the exact same thing this time around once again. 19 assists for Michigan in this one, only 10 for Florida State. Mike Smith has been the catalyst all year, obviously, on the assist end, but it was really good to see Eli Brooks get 4 in this one as well. He didn't have a big game offensively, but he didn't need to. Again, he affects the game in other ways, had those 4 assists. Balsa Koprivic at 7-1 was a guy that a lot of people were talking about coming into this one, and he really didn't have that big impact down low that a lot of people thought he would. Florida State's big guards didn't have the big impact that a lot of people thought they would. Scotty Barnes, a lot of people at 6'9" as a freshman power forward who runs some point for them, a lot of people thought would be a mismatch in this one, but Michigan really took him out of his game as well. I thought the overall game plan that Juwan Howard came up with was incredible, out-coaching a veteran coach, and Leonard Hamilton, who's been at Florida State since 2002, 2003, one of the longest tenured coaches in college basketball, one of the most successful ones in the ACC. And again, Juwan Howard completely out-coached him in this one, and it was incredibly impressive to see.
Yeah, when you talk about taking Scotty Barnes out, Franz Wagner, I mean, it was pretty unbelievable. And then he was getting around Scotty Barnes on, you know, Scotty Barnes was like clapping these guys' faces and then just get taken right to the rim. And that was kind of the story there.
Like the MSU floor slap.
Yeah, you slap the floor and it's an automatic at least 2 points.
Quick points, yeah.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Franz played a great game, no question.
Yeah, and that defense will be needed again here. I think this is interesting going into the UCLA game now. They kind of got 4 guards, you know, and I think that's going to bring Brandon Johns out to the perimeter to guard probably that Jaquez, who's very, very good, can shoot, can, you know, he can get down low as well. I think Johns will have the advantage there. But I think Michigan's going to be able to get it into Hunter Dickinson down low. Cody Riley's their big man at 6'9", no depth there. If he gets a foul or 2 early, they, you know, may have to take him out. They may have to go to, you know, one of their other guys that are 6'9", and, you know, they only played another big last game 1 minute. Jaquez plays some of the 5 as well. So That will be interesting. But Tiger Campbell versus Mike Smith, I think, is going to be a great hair game. I think it's going to be an interesting matchup because they do similar things. They both average 5.4 assists per game. Tiger Campbell kind of just gets in, puts his head down, gets in the lane, and then finds a guy for a kick out. Very good passer. Gritty team. Crazy that they were down 11 at halftime to Michigan State, and they're all the way here. Credit them for doing that and getting here. And, they deserve to be here, but at the same time, I think Michigan should feel good about its chances tonight. But you got to keep that chip on your shoulder because people were doubting them, and Hunter Dickinson said this yesterday. People were doubting them all the other games. He's like, we're not about to let anybody on the bandwagon now.
Yeah, well, I'm on whether he wants me there or not. So kiss my butt, Hunter. I'm just kidding. But it's, because we're starting to see them play offensively like they can, even without Isaiah Livers, we're starting to see other guys step up and they're getting the flow back. And that's what I've been talking about for weeks. It looked clunky. The offense looked clunky without Livers in there. Even when Livers was gimpy, this offense wasn't looking as good as it has. And a big part of that is, guys not being able to move and cut, and we saw Livers, we thought being complacent. And we're like, what happened to Isaiah? Well, it just so happened that he had a broken foot and he was playing on an injured foot against Michigan State. You didn't have, Eli Brooks. That's going to be, maybe Michigan State will hang a banner for that because that's all they keep talking about. Well, we beat this Michigan team. Well, they beat him without Eli Brooks and they beat him, with a one-legged Isaiah Livers, big deal. So, what these guys have done in really getting the offense going again without Isaiah Livers has been fantastic. And a big part of that's been Shawnee Brown being able to open the floor. I posted before the game in our pregame thread, man, he was playing with some swag. Just in warmups, you could tell, he's hitting shots. And you keep an eye on little things like that. And you could tell that he had that little bounce in his step. And you're thinking, okay, he likes these rims. Maybe he's going to come out with a big game. He's been shooting the ball extremely well. That's what's going to have to continue to happen. They're going to need a couple other guys to step up again against LSU. It was Eli Brooks, and today you talked about the matchups. I think UCLA is what? They have a really good offense in KenPom. Do we know what they're rated in KenPom?
Yeah, they got a great offense, a lot of pick and roll, a lot of just ISO. I mean, if you watch some of their games, Michigan State, they play well. This Johnny Juzang, Kentucky transfer, sophomore guard, is their best player, averaging 15. And, I think I'll say the most interesting thing in this game is Michigan kind of plays a little bit back and sags back on some of those ball screens. UCLA is one of the top mid-range shooting teams in the country, according to Synergy. So those are going to be there, I think, unless Michigan switches things up. And Juwan Howard has really not liked to go away from that. He very much believes in taking away the three and taking away easy looks at the rim. So if UCLA knocks some of those down, I think it's going to be a back-and-forth game for at least a while. But as the analytics have kind of shown throughout the last few years in the NBA and college, you don't really make your living shooting from the mid-range. And so I think if Michigan can make them continue to take those. If they make them, it's going to be back and forth. But Hunter Dickinson at the rim is big because I think he's going to affect some shots against a little undersized kind of team.
And I don't think UCLA plays a whole lot of defense, right, Austin?
I don't believe they do, no.
So your thoughts on that matchup, Austin, in terms of Michigan's offense against UCLA's defense, and Clayton kind of touched on it a little bit with going to Hunter Dickinson. I'd love to see him have one of those games where he's so confident and just dominant in the paint, where like against Maryland, where they just can't check him. And I don't think you're going to see the kind of physical play down low that he has seen, people trying to keep him out of the paint against UCLA. And watching them a little bit, they give up some points in the paint.
Michigan's going to have a big advantage offensively down low with Dickinson. Clayton mentioned Cody Riley, and he's really the only true five-man that they play. And again, he's only 6'9". We've talked so often about Mike Smith and him potentially being outsized against other guards. It's not going to be the case this time around. Tiger Campbell is 5'11", which is obviously how tall Mike Smith is on a good day, but their numbers are incredibly similar. Mike Smith led the Big Ten in assists this year at 5.4. Tiger Campbell also averaged 5.4 throughout the Pac-12, led the conference, so that's an intriguing matchup that I'm going to keep an eye on in this one. Hunter Dickinson in his press conference yesterday talked about how people have been doubting Michigan all year long. They were picked 5th or 6th or even lower coming into the season in the Big Ten, and then they were kind of a trendy upset pick in that 8-9 second-round game. And against Florida State, a lot of people viewed that as a toss-up. Now they're kind of seen as the favorite against UCLA. And he said, you know what, we like that underdog role and that underdog mentality, playing with a chip on our shoulder. UCLA also talked about how some people are doubting them heading into this one. Hunter Dickinson said they absolutely deserved to be here, especially after they beat Alabama in that Sweet 16. Some people called it somewhat of a fluky win. Alabama only hit 11 of their 25 free throws in that one. But you know what? UCLA nevertheless got it done. They're playing with a lot of confidence. But again, Michigan is now seen as the favorite. I'm anxious to see how they play in this one. They have really put it together since Isaiah Livers went out with injury. Mick Cronin, UCLA's head coach, was asked about that yesterday, how impressed he's been with Michigan since Livers has been out. And right away, he kind of flipped the script and he said, you know what, we're in a similar position. We lost one of our best players as well, and Chris Smith, who was the team's second leading rebounder and their leading scorer when he got hurt on New Year's Eve and was out for the year. But I think it's a different situation because UCLA's had, 2.5 months to get used to playing without Chris Smith, where Michigan has had 2.5 weeks. So I don't think they're quite the same situation, but I think Michigan's offense is going to play well in this one against a Bruin team who doesn't play much defense, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see somewhat of a shootout in this one. So I'm anxious to see how this one plays out, especially with Michigan now being viewed as somewhat of a favorite finally heading into a game.
Has Mick Cronin gone a little bit Hollywood? How come his teams don't play defense anymore? I mean, they're decent, but
right. It looks like Austin's frozen. By the way, I don't know if you can see this.
He gone. He gone.
He gone. So, it's. Do we need to stop? Can you hear us, Austin?
Yeah, I can hear you. I've heard you the whole time.
That's enough. I'd rather see him like that and have people make fun of him. So, yeah, that's a good question because Mick Cronin. It's like Weekend at Bernie's here, man. So it is. It's like, but you know what? When in Rome, right? So you're out there on the coast, and I'll say this: they still play a lot of one-on-one hero ball. And when I watched the first half and the first 3 quarters of that Michigan State game, I thought UCLA was terrible. I really did. And give them credit; they've been playing better. But part of them being here, let's be honest, is the draw. When Michigan State fans saw that draw with BYU. And who knew that they would have played Abilene Christian? These guys are kicking themselves, man. We could be looking at a Michigan State matchup tonight. Not that they would have gotten past, these teams that they did in Alabama. In my opinion, they would have gotten run off the floor and probably would have lost. But, that's all part of it. And you play who's in front of you, and you can go back and look and, okay, who did you play to get to the Final Four? I don't care who you played to get to the Final Four. You get to the Final Four, you get to the Final Four. You get your T-shirt, you get your banner. So to me, this is a UCLA team that is peaking, but I don't think it's a great team. And it'd be a big disappointment if Michigan didn't win this game.
Can't see if Austin wants to jump in or not, so I'll just say this. I think they're underseeded a little bit at 11. Obviously, they've kind of proved that. They lost their 4 straight coming into the tournament, so I think that dropped them down probably a line or two. And then Austin mentioned that injury earlier on in the season. But yeah, I think that it's crazy that Houston didn't play a top 25 KenPom team and got to the Final Four. They got their draw, but they deserve to be there. Yeah, Abilene Christian, the draw for UCLA. I got some Michigan State fans in my bracket pool who have UCLA in the Elite Eight because they picked Michigan State / UCLA to get there. Right. So they're looking pretty good right now. Actually, quite a few, some Sparty fans there that I've seen do that. So good for them. I mean, it makes it even funnier that that's the case. But yeah, I mean, Michigan didn't have the toughest draw in 2018 when they got all the way to the national championship game, but that was still one of the best teams in the country, obviously, and they proved that. Playing Loyola in the Final Four was nice, but you play who's in front of you.
You look at Michigan State's national championship under Tom Izzo, and they played a bunch of crappy teams. That was, and I think it was the least watched final in the history of NCAA basketball because nobody wanted to see Michigan State in Florida, and that Wisconsin game was a football game in the Final Four. So yeah, we don't want to hear that crap. It's all about surviving and advancing this time of year and playing who's in front of you, and hopefully Austin's parents let him in from the barn next time so that we don't have to sit there and look at his frozen face. And but are you there, Austin? I want to know what your opinion on Michigan's draw so far.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are saying that Michigan lucked out with this UCLA draw, but at the same time, when you look at the first 2 rounds or the second round in Sweet 16, Michigan didn't have favorable draws in that regard. They played the highest seed possible in 8 LSU and 4 Florida State. So it's not like it's been an easy road so far for Michigan. Making the Final Four, no matter how you do it, is an incredible accomplishment, and I really don't think you can take anything away. I know some people are bashing Houston right now, for example, in that bottom right region of the bracket. They've played, I believe, double-digit seeds in every round so far, but you know what? They got the job done, and they made the Final Four. Nevertheless, Michigan got that favorable draw in 2018 in the Final Four against Loyola Chicago, but at the same time, that was a red-hot Loyola team who had beaten everybody in front of them. So it's a great accomplishment nonetheless, and I really don't think you can take anything away from anybody who makes the Final Four.
Clay, I feel like we should have a Sharpie and be drawing on his face right now. You know what I mean?
We can. I'll edit that in. I'll do some.
There you go, attaboy. All right.
But yeah, so I guess final thoughts and maybe a prediction on this game. I think we all feel decent about Michigan's chances, which again could be a little scary. But it is funny in our profession, you kind of got to go out on a limb sometimes, and we have to pick all these games. So it's like, other people aren't being put on the record. So I will just point that out. We're in a tough spot, but not complaining. But I got Michigan, it's a 7-point spread. I got Michigan covering that a little bit by 10. I think they're going to control the game, and I have confidence that the offense is going to continue to play well. And we talked about it with game plan. It's like, I don't know, at this point, how many doubts you can have about what this staff is going to put together in terms of finding weaknesses on UCLA. Maybe not even ones that have been exploited this tournament. Like Florida State wasn't getting beat to the rim and getting outscored in the paint, in the last, several games coming in. But Michigan was like, hey, I think we can do that. And they did it. So I like that. I think that Michigan is going to be able to play some solid defense. I kind of mentioned some things earlier, like, putting Brandon Johns out on the perimeter. I think he can fare okay there. You might need to see more Sean D. Brown coming in off the bench to guard, the guys like Juzang and Jaquez. That Bernard is a good 3-point shooter who had 17 and hit 4 threes against Alabama. So, with Michigan's 3-point defense and kind of the way they play, I got them by 10 in this one.
Yeah, I think probably about 7 to 9, something like that. And it is funny how personally people take it when Michigan fans take it when you bet against, like in football season. And pick Penn State. I was the only one to pick Penn State to beat Michigan. Everybody's like, "You suck. I hate you." And it's just like you get death threats. You picked them to lose to Ohio State in the Big Ten tournament. You suck. I hate your guts. Why are you doing this for a living? You know what you feel. You pick what you feel. And the reason I thought they would lose to LSU was because I wasn't sure anybody would be able to step up offensively. And then all of a sudden, Sean D. Brown breaks out of his slumber, and there you go. So and now though they're playing extremely well. They're getting it back. They're back, like I said, to where they were before offensively without Isaiah Livers. Playing great team basketball. So I like them to win this one. Going to be fun to watch that Gonzaga game too tonight. I think that's going to be, and we'll know going into that one who Michigan's opponent would be, right, if they won. So, but that's why this is such a fun time of year, guys. And I think it's going to be another Final Four for Michigan. I think there'll be a lot of Michigan fans there tonight at the stadium as well.
I don't know if this is a good thing. We're all in the exact same boat in our predictions on this one. I've got Michigan by 7 to 10 as well, something like 82-73, somewhere along those lines. I think Michigan gets it done. They're playing with a lot of confidence. They're looking like the team that we saw once again in January and the first part of February when they were playing some of their best ball of the year, and they're playing with a ton of confidence. They're dangerous right now. I think UCLA, on the other hand, is playing by far their best ball of the year, but they weren't that good of a team throughout most of the year, and I think they've kind of hit their ceiling. So I'm confident heading into this one, maybe a little too confident, but with the game plans that Juwan Howard's coming up, with the confidence this team is playing with, I see Michigan winning by, again, 7 to 10 points or so tonight.
And a game to cut down nets. You mentioned a T-shirt game, T-shirt and hat game. Those are the best, and that's what you live for. And Michigan has been fortunate over the last decade or so, 9 years, in hanging a lot of those banners, really 10 because they had the Big Ten championship in 12. So just an incredible run, and they're still going. And last thought, Chris, I heard you mention this on the Huge Show last night, how, Brendan Quinn wrote that piece saying that, this could be Juwan Howard's best team at Michigan, and it makes you think it's like he's recruiting well, but are you about experience going forward? I don't know. And obviously Livers would help it if they had him. You could argue for sure this is going to be his best team. But with some pros here and Hunter Dickinson, what do you guys think about that? I think that's kind of interesting. I think the Michigan will still get back to some of these big games and everything going forward. But when you look at this team, you got to be greedy when you have this type of talent and experience.
Yeah, and everybody's going to call him a hater and, oh, you're stupid and so on and so forth. But he makes a great point that teams with experience. This is I hate to bring up John Beilein because everybody, but this is part of the storyline, guys. Is that this is how he wanted to build his teams to win, and with veterans. And the problem is that his kids got too good too early, and they all left, and he never got to that point. But he was winning with them anyway. So it's a different type of game when you've got a bunch of young guys there and you've got to teach them, and it's not okay. It is not okay it is okay to sit there and question things going forward that, okay, is it going to be this good forever, man, when you don't have veterans, and you got younger talent, and how is he going to respond? So there's nothing wrong with questioning that. It doesn't make you a hater. It doesn't mean that oh my God, you're some kind of blasphemous traitor, so on and so forth. So it just means that it's another challenge. But from what we've seen from Juwan Howard in terms of keeping the culture where it was and his importance on that, I asked him that question yesterday, and he said, yeah, man, it's about making sure these kids are all bought in about together and not themselves. And getting that, to me, is a huge step. He's going to have some great teams, but I agree with Quinn in one thing. Strike when the iron's hot, man. You never know. Like Beilein said, you never know when you're going to get back here.
Yeah, very seldom do we see teams this dominant throughout the course of an entire season, the way Michigan has been this year, especially with all the veterans that they have on the roster. So it would be difficult for Juwan Howard to have another team in the future this dominant. But at the same time, I really don't think there's much reason to look that far down the road with the amount of roster turnover in college basketball nowadays. Juwan Howard will likely be here a long time, assuming everything goes according to plan. He's going to have plenty of ups and downs here. He's going to have more really good teams here. So may he have another team this good? He might somewhere down the future. But again, I really don't think there's much point in looking that far down the road with how often things and how quickly things change nowadays in college basketball from year to year.
Yep, it's a good point. All that matters is tonight's game and that he's pushing all the right buttons with this team. So enjoy the game, everybody. Have fun, and here's hoping Michigan cuts down some nets tonight.